Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Horror Analysis with me, Drew. Hey, how's it going? We are still on the horror tale, and we are still with our friend Noel. We're finishing with Noel today. He served us well. He's done a good job. He was very exact. He's done everything a philosopher of art should. And we only buy about 75% of what he says, but hey, that's not too bad. Yes. Anyway, the rest of Philosophy of Horror, is going to focus on the stuff I'm not interested in. The why of horror. The paradox of the heart, as Noel Carroll calls it, the philosophy of mind behind why people like horror. And it's not any of my interests. I don't have to ask why horror. Horror exists. Horror is. Healthy people like horror. People who don't like horror, I sort of consider unhealthy. Is it kind of weird? Kinda. Am I going to go out of my way to go through the philosophy of mind to figure it out? No, I'm not. I've taken a philosophy of mind, an art and mind course, a philosophy of art, meaning philosophy of mind, and just trying to have them explain why people like art. Like, why would people like art? That's a weird thing to like. And then you have a course about it, and it's a very long, difficult course, and none of my interests were touched. I took it because it was a philosophy of art course, and I'm a philosopher of art. Oh my goodness, I can't talk today. Is it going to be like this all video? Might very well be. Oh my. Anyway, I took it, and it was a philosophy of art course, so of course I took it. But there was no value theory, which is what I was after. It was a epistemological course, and that's not my interest at all. So there are reasons why people like art in general. I don't care what they are. People like art. If you don't like art, I do think that's very unhealthy. There's people who, and their explanations on why people like horror, I think are pretty much going to be the same as why people like art. And if you don't like horror, I think that's pretty unhealthy as well. So I've flipped through. Sorry, Noel, I've only flipped through the rest of your book. It's not an interest of me. I'm not a philosopher of mind. But the last point we're going to go over with him is the last plot type, or quasi-plot type. We've gone over for 2 days the complex discovery plot, and we went over the overreacher plot. Now we're skipping down to the bottom is sort of the fantastic, which is sort of a horror plot. Sort of. It's a distant cousin to the horror plot. It's a neighbor down the road of the horror plot. The fantastic deals with fantastic hesitation. That is the meat of what we're talking about. Fantastic hesitation is when you can't decide. You're hesitant to choose. Why is this all tangled? 1 second. Oh, that's much better. No, it's not. There. When you're hesitant to choose between a naturalistic explanation of the events in a story and the supernatural explanation of events in the story. When that hesitation goes, that's fantastic. It's not, hey, fantastic. It's fantastic like fantasy, that phantasm. It's the Eastern European version of the word fantastic. In Russia and Eastern European countries, fantastic literature is not. It's science fiction and fantasy, and horror. Those are all fantastic fiction. The fantastic proper is based on a French-Bulgarian philosopher. And I'm going to slaughter the name now. Tzvetan Todorov. I apologize if that's wrong. It may very may well be wrong. Oh my goodness, I'm just not talking well today. It's okay, I have my hot tea. It's rooibos. It's great. So, Todorov, in The Fantastic, written in 1970, writes, well, he defines it. This is in book page 143 in Philosophy of Horror. Noel Carroll is actually going to give us the quote, and I'm going to put it up as well. That comes from what he says is page 33 in The Fantastic by Todorov, for whatever version he's using. I haven't read the Todorov book. It's interesting. I was very interested when I read it in Carroll. It actually inspired a short story of mine. Well, it was actually a screenplay. I don't think it turned out too well all these years later. But when I first read it, I was very interested in The Fantastic. It's very cool. So going into it, we're trying to shoot if you're from the writer's side, you're shooting for having the reader not be able to decide, is it supernatural or natural events? From the reader's side, you can't decide. It's a fantastic story. I'm not from this point on, when I say fantastic, I don't mean, hey, that's great. I'm talking about, obviously, the fantastic hesitation. This is the definition. First, the text must oblige the reader to consider the world of the characters as a world of living persons, and to hesitate between a natural or supernatural explanation of the events described. The first part is groundwork. You need to have this going on. You can't see the characters in the book or the movie as the actors, or just, you have to be drawn in enough to feel that they're real people. If you're watching a movie and you can only see Bruce Willis, the actor, and you can't see the character that he is portraying, you're going to be distracted, and you're not going to see the characters as real people. You're going to be too distracted by the actor, or any other actor. I just used Bruce Willis because the first time I made this video, I used him as an example, just because it was easy for me to think about. But when I watch a Bruce Willis movie, I see Corbin Dallas, or I see John McClane. I don't see Bruce Willis because I'm drawn into the story. I'm watching Corbin Dallas and Lilu. I'm not watching Bruce Willis and Mia Jovovich. Or I'm watching John McClane and at least the first two Die Hards. I haven't seen I think I did see 3 at once. That was with Samuel L. Jackson, so I did see 3. I didn't see 4 or 5. Anyway, but you have to be drawn into the story as the audience. You have to believe that the characters are real people. You have to see the characters as real people. And then, in that, when you're seeing the characters as real people, you can't tell whether the events are real. Well, you can tell you can tell the events are real. You're not sure if they're natural or supernatural. If you are not seeing, if you're only seeing Bruce Willis and you're not seeing the character he's portraying, you're not seeing the events as real, you're seeing the events as a movie. Or any other actor. I'm trying not to knock Bruce Willis. Actually, when I was giving the example, I thought of a Bruce Willis thing, so that's going to be in here too. A fantastic Bruce Willis movie. Sort of fantastic. You see the events as real because you're sucked into the story. You don't doubt that the events are real if you're sucked into a story. But you can't decide whether they are naturally caused or supernaturally caused. The second point, this hesitation may also be experienced by a character. Thus, the reader's role is, so to speak, entrusted to a character, and at the same time the hesitation is represented, it becomes one of the themes of the work. In the case of naive reading, the actual reader identifies himself with the character. So, the hesitation may not only be from the audience, the hesitation may be the character's hesitation, and you're just identifying with that character so much that it becomes your hesitation as well. The character is the conduit for the fantastic hesitation that you experience. Conduit, I like that word. Good job, Drew. Alright. So, the character isn't sure. If the character isn't sure whether the events that are going on around him are supernaturally caused by spirits or ghosts or monsters, or caused by natural causes, conspiracy or something along those lines, you're feeling what the character's feeling, you're sucked into the character's point of view, you're feeling that hesitation as well. This is not necessary, and he makes a point later of saying this isn't necessary. But it is possible to have the hesitation through another character, through a character. Third, the reader must adopt a certain attitude with regards to the text. He will reject allegorical as well as poetic interpretations. There we are. My mouth is not working. Anyway, this ties into this first point, that first half of the first point, as Carroll points out. These are negative things. This is not another requirement. It's just you can't have these kind of things. If you're sucked into the story and you're just into the plot, you're sucked into the plot. You're not thinking about things in allegorical sense or poetic sense. If you're thinking about things in allegorical or poetic sense, you're not sucked in enough to the plot to consider the world of the characters as the world of living persons. I think actually Todorov could have put it in those terms a little bit easier, and as Carroll points out, that it's negative things. You can't have these things going on. But as a filmmaker or as a author, if your audience is seeing things in poetic or allegorical terms, there's not that immersion into the story that is required in order to have the fantastic hesitation. They're too busy thinking about allegories or poetics or word choice or diction or something, and they're not in with the characters. They're not page turning. So the real meat of it is the bottom half of this one. The reader hesitates between a natural or supernatural explanation of the events described. I guess the other two were qualitative. You need to have certain things going on in your book in general. You have to have the reader sucked in, or have the audience sucked into your work. It's so immersed that they're feeling everything that the characters are feeling. They're not seeing actors as actors, or seeing them as only as a character. They're not seeing writers as just words on a page, or allegories for something, or poetics, or whatnot. They're sucked into the story. They're feeling what the characters are feeling. The second point isn't necessary. He says it's not necessary. The character may feel the hesitation himself. It's not necessary. One of the examples I came up with afterwards, after the first video I did of this, because I'm redoing this audio because I didn't like the audio on the first videos I've done, because I was using the laptop microphone, which is awful. So I bought myself this thing, and it's getting a lot better. So we'll talk about there is one example where the character is feeling the hesitation, and you as the audience are sucked into that hesitation as well. So Todorov says the best example of a fantastic work is Henry James' Turn of the Screw. I don't like Henry James' Turn of the Screw. I think it is probably the best example of the fantastic. I just don't like the story. It's not good. I'm against it. I'm anti. So I'll go over the plot. A governess goes to teach two kids in an old mansion. The kids are a little not really sure they're all together. The governess, we're not sure if she's a little bit off kilter as well. But the governess sees one of the kids talking to or being followed by a man with red hair that no one seems to see. And then a little bit later on, she sees the kids being followed by or talking to a woman. Was it a woman in black, or am I just confusing it with something else? I think I'm confusing it with something else. But some woman that no one else seems to, that she had never seen before, and she sort of knew all the people in the house. So she talks to the cook, who's sort of the co-conspirator, and the cook says, "Oh, I believe in ghosts. So, tell me about these people you're seeing." And it's like, "Well, I see this guy with red hair, and I see this woman." And the cook says, "Well, there was a guy with red hair who used to work here, and he knew the kids, but he was a bad dude, and he died. So maybe you're seeing him," sort of thing. The cook's weird as well. But the cook never sees anything. So, and then the woman's described, and oh no, that's the old governess, the one who's dead. So the new governess is either seeing ghosts or just disconnected from reality. More stuff goes on. We start questioning the governess's sanity a bit more. We see more appearances of ghosts, and we're in between. We don't know if ghosts are going down, or we don't know if the governess is going nuts. If ghosts are messing with the kids, if the ghosts are out to get the kids, or the governess is just going whacked, to use the official term. Delusional. I think delusional is probably the best term. Whacked is so PC. There are a few more examples that I want to go over. First off, I will say Turn of the Shrew. Oh my goodness. Taming of the Screw and Turn of the Shrew. Turn of the Screw by Henry James is available at LibriVox.org. You don't actually have to buy it. You don't have to read it. You can just get the audiobook for free from LibriVox. I'm sure you can find a good reader. Here's a few versions of it, if I remember correctly. LibriVox.org, I'm trying to recommend more and more because it's a great place for free audiobooks. Um, all public domain books are just being read by amateurs, and they're in the public domain. So, yeah. The second one that's mentioned is The Haunting of Hill House, which is Shirley Jackson's haunted house. You're never sure whether... Of course, we're going to go over Haunting of Hill House a lot more in Stephen King when we go into Stephen King next time, because Stephen King thinks it's one of the better haunted house books. So, you're never sure at the end whether Eleanor was just going crazy and she wrote stuff on the wall and she was just seeing things and hearing things, or whether the ghosts were just talking to Eleanor and trying to get her dead. And succeeded. The fantastic hesitation goes right through to the end. When the fantastic hesitation goes right through to the end, and you're left at the last page of the last sentence, last period, you're done with the book or story, and you don't know whether you have a supernatural or natural explanation is correct, that's called pure fantastic. There are two other incarnations of the fantastic uncanny and the fantastic marvelous. The pure fantastic, you don't know. It comes to the end and you're not sure whether it was supernatural or natural. Supernatural or natural. The fantastic uncanny is you get to the end and you realize, nope, it was natural. It just seemed like it could have been supernatural during the course of the book. And then the fantastic marvelous is, it turns out at the end, it was supernatural, but it could have been natural for most of the book. Most of these will end up will need the character, the main character, who is either causing the fantastic or causing the hesitation, or the one you identify with, could be nuts. That's basically the trick. Most of them are, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a bit, 4.5. 4.5 out of the 5 examples. Well, 5.5 out of the 6 examples, really, because one of these is a movie version. Is the characters could be nuts. So, Turn of the Screw, Haunting of Hill House. The other pure fantastic would be Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu's Green Tea, which is also available on LibriVox.org, like 2 half-hour MP3s in their Ghost Story collection 4. Which is a it's not pure ghost, it's spirit. It's an evil spirit monkey, which is taking the place of a ghost. A guy kills himself and a preacher kills himself. A preacher kills himself and... let's see where we're at. A preacher kills himself. I don't know if it is a preacher. Let me double check this. Yeah, a minister. A minister commits suicide. A psychologist goes and looks over his writings, his diary and whatnot. And there's these writings about a spirit monkey, an evil spirit monkey that's hounding this minister. And he eventually is driven to kill himself. And the psychologist says, "Oh, I could have saved him. I have he was drinking too much green tea, so that's what made him go wonky in the brain, and I could have saved him with my patented cure of putting ice-cold cologne on his body, and he would have been fine." And the more you read about it, the psychologist guy doesn't seem to be making any sense, which makes you think that it's more likely that it was a spirit monkey, etc. Le Fanu is very good. I actually, if you get a chance to read any Le Fanu or listen to the audiobooks on LibriVox.org, I'm not trying to advertise them that much, but you can. I've listened to quite a few of his stuff there. I recommend them. His ghost stories are ridiculously good. Very scary, even today, 170 years later. He wrote an early vampire story about, well, much earlier than Bram Stoker, and Bram Stoker quite possibly could have read it when he was growing up, and then been influenced by it when he wrote Dracula. Of course, there's no record of it, but Le Fanu was Irish, Stoker was Irish. Le Fanu's work was certainly available in when Bram Stoker was growing up. So it's sort of unlikely that he didn't read it, but can't tell. So I'm not saying it wasn't an influence as such, but it was probably an influence. And that's called Carmilla. I actually recommend that one as well. I will do a little bit of that about Le Fanu in the history section when we get to it. Another one, which I had not read. I never heard of this guy. I didn't even register the first time I read through this several years ago. James Hogg. The Private Memoirs and Confessions of a Justified Sinner. This is an odd one, and I read over the notes, and it keeps sounding cool. It sounds really good when I was reading over this again. It could be that the main character was a religious fanatic who killed his mom and dad, his sister, his lover, and other people in religious fanaticism and whatnot. That's one explanation. That's the naturalistic explanation of things. The supernatural explanation was this guy had a doppelganger. That seems unlikely, but it's sort of a first read through and a second read through. The first read through is naturalistic. It's somebody else saying, "Oh, he's a psycho." He killed his family and lover, girlfriend, or whatever. And the second read through is he's beset by a doppelganger, a evil twin type supernatural creature, who's doing these things and he's getting the blame for it. It seems really cool. I'm not familiar with James Hogg. I did look him up. I know that this one's available at Project Gutenberg. It's not available on LibriVox yet. Some of his other work is available on LibriVox. I've downloaded it. I haven't listened to it yet, but I certainly will. And I'm sure we're going to go over him in the history section as well, because Lovecraft talks about him a bit in his when he goes over the history stuff in supernatural horror and literature. So I'm sure I'm going to probably not read Justified Sinner book, the private memoirs of Confessions of a Justified Sinner, but I'll listen to some of the short stories, the weird fiction. Carroll makes a point of pointing out that there's not a whole lot in the realm of fantastic films. He mentions The Innocents, which is based on Henry James' Turn of the Screw, directed by Jack Clayton, and apparently it was screenwritten by Truman Capote, which is pretty cool. Yeah, that seemed it's not one I'm familiar with, and of course I'm not a big Turn of the Screw fan. But if you can do it in the film version, even for a little while, pure fantastic in film version is very rare. You can have sometimes fantastic uncanny and sometimes fantastic marvelous, but pardon me, just finishing that off. But pure fantastic is going to be very difficult. When I read this through the first time, of course I sat down and tried to write myself a fantastic screenplay for a movie. I don't think it works anymore. I did at the time. I actually got pretty far into it before I lost interest and went on to different things. But it was essentially just create. It's the division between probably crazy and ghosts. It was a haunted gym. If it's haunted, it's a haunted gym. If it's not, it's a crazy person trying to convince other people that it's a haunted gym and ends up burning the building down, resulting in the death of firefighters. Or the gym in its last groping for evil, it kills firefighters that are trying to save the gym. And of course, all these accidents happen in gyms. Pretty much all the accidents you can think about happening in gyms. And of course, the ghost that's haunting the gym haunts the girl, but only the girl. Yeah, it actually don't think it works anymore. But I was 6 years younger than I am now, so at the time I thought it was great. And it's not bad. Actually, it was, a lot of horror movie tropes. It's when she's in the gym, the main character who might be crazy, she closes her locker, and there's a mirror on the other side. So when she closes her locker, the mirror is there, and she sees the ghost, which is a girl who fell from the rope. When you climb the rope in gym, she fell from the rope and broke her neck. So pretty much all the time she's like this when she's the ghost. So the possibly crazy, fantastic person that you're identifying with sees the ghost behind, and of course they turn around, nothing's there. You turn around back to the mirror, there's nothing in the mirror. That's a horror movie trope that I'm sure everybody's familiar with. It was alright. She ends up breaking her leg in the gym, and then she hears, when the blood's trickling down the drain, because it happened in the shower, she hears giggling coming out of the drain. There's weightlifting accidents, like various fights breaking out, shattering backboard in basketball. I put as much into it. I think I actually put too much into it. And then at the end, she's charged with arson, and manslaughter because she was responsible for killing two. Because the gym fire killed two firefighters or whatever, three firefighters. And at the end, there's the newsreel that talks about her being on trial. Yeah. The newsreader says, "Oh, and the new gym being built on the grounds of the old gym is fraught with, the disasters of the construction. There's been 5 injuries on the construction site or something ridiculous. You know how it is. Anyway, but just to keep the fantastic going." As I said, I still don't think it works, but it was fun. And that's how you would write a fantastic story. But nonetheless, so the example of the fantastic, uncanny that is given is The Hound of the Baskervilles, Sherlock Holmes story, also available on LibriVox, where it could have been a werewolf, or it could be a conspiracy of murderers and wild dogs, etc. And Sherlock Holmes, of course, realizes pretty quick that, hey, I'm Sherlock Holmes, it's not supernatural, it's a conspiracy of, murderers and wild dogs and whatnot. So that's the uncanny. It's naturalistic explanation, except for if you weren't Sherlock Holmes, you wouldn't realize that right away, because it's uncanny. It's he's the only one that can figure it out because he's Sherlock Holmes. Other people might read it as supernatural, as a werewolf. The fantastic marvelous is where it turns out to be supernatural. I didn't see any examples in the book, but I did think of one, and it was because I was talking about Bruce Willis. The Sixth Sense. Which most of you have seen, and if you haven't, I'm going to spoil it for you anyway. I'm sure it's been spoiled for you before. The kid sees ghosts. Bruce Willis's character is a child psychiatrist who's dealt with kids who've seen ghosts before, and he knows that there's no ghost, and he tries to convince the kid that there's no ghost. But there's weird stuff going on, and so it's, how is this kid knowing, like, ancient Greek or something, or Greek, when he's a 7-year-old or whatever, Haley Joel Osment. Was it Greek, or was the other kid Greek? Whatever. So, you see the ghost that Haley Joel Osment sees, but you identify with Bruce Willis's character, so the hesitation is experienced by the character, and then that character is the vehicle for us to also feel the hesitation. We find out later that, hey, Bruce Willis is a ghost the whole time because the last kid who saw ghosts shot him when he grew up, because he really did see ghosts, and the only reason the kid can see Bruce Willis at all is because he's a ghost. So that's Sixth Sense is also not fantastic pure, but fantastic marvelous, because, hey, there are ghosts, and that's what's causing the kid to see them. He's not nuts. He's just... So that's the half. When I said there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half out of 6, out of 7. Turn of the Screw, the governess could be crazy. Haunting the Hill House, the Eleanor could be crazy. Green Tea, the minister could be crazy. The Justified Sinner, the religious zealot could be crazy. And Bruce Willis is Sixth Sense. The kid, Haley Joel Osment, could be nuts, but he's not because they tip the hand. When the fantastic is not pure, it turns out the child isn't nuts. Just the hesitation for a while is, he could have been nuts. He wasn't. And of course, Hound of the Baskervilles, there's no supernatural. What Carroll will say, why Carroll talks about this at all, is there's only one way that you can have this be horror, and that is if it is Fantastic Marvelous. It's the Bruce Willis one. If it's not Fantastic Marvelous, if it's Fantastic Uncanny, then it's not supernatural. If it's not supernatural, it can't have a monster. If it can't have a monster, it's not horror. And if you don't know if there's a monster or not, if you don't know if there's a doppelganger, if you don't know if there's a evil spirit monkey, if you don't know there's ghosts, you can't call it a horror book because there's no monster, there's no definite monster. And if there is a monster, it's not, you don't know if it's threatening or not. The other example they give for movie versions is the cat people. We're not sure whether the girl's going nuts or there's cat people turning into jaguars and stalking her. So there's elements of that in the cat people. So that's the other movie version. So that's 3. That's not too bad. So Carroll is going to say elements of the fantastic can be in horror plots, like The Sixth Sense, as long as they tip their hand showing that they are marvelous, fantastic marvelous, are supernatural, and those ghosts are threats, or those monsters are threats, and impure. In The Sixth Sense, I don't know if Carroll would even go as far as say they're threats, because the ghosts weren't, was it horror? Because the ghosts weren't threatening. They're scary as balls. Oh, they creeped me out when I was a kid. Ugh. The hanging ones? Oh, man. The vomiting girl, yeah, that's pretty bad. But the hanged ones in the courthouse, they used to hang people here. And then you see the friggin'... Oh, man, that's awful. But they weren't threats. The bicyclist that was hit by a car was just walking around. Everybody else seems to be helping the kid or asking the kid for help, not after the kid. So I wonder that's why they say this is a thriller on here, the #1 thriller of all time, which must have been dethroned by now. God, that's probably an old pick. Also from Google Images, so where I'm stealing all these pictures from, besides the ones I'm getting from LibriVox. Yeah, I don't even know if Carroll would call that horror. The ghosts seem threatening, but I don't think they are actually threatening. But Carroll says you can put elements of the fantastic into a complex discovery plot, or even into an overreacher plot. Like putting into after discovery, before the confirmation can be... so we have the onset, the discovery, the confirmation, and the confrontation. You can have the confirmation section be part of... have fantastic elements. You can have... We're not sure if these people the discoverers are nuts. but they have to be turn out that they aren't nuts because we need the monster to be a horror story. Once again, I think this is a bit where Carroll falls down, because these ghost stories, these classic ghost stories, Turn of the Screw and Haunting of Hill House, aren't horror stories, according to Carroll, because they're pure fantastic. They're not fantastic marvelous. They never say, "Hey, there's ghosts." And we're going to go into King now next time. So we will be talking more about King's versions versus Carroll's versions. King says, "Hey, these are all horror stories, even stories with no possibility of monsters, quote monsters, in Carroll's sense. Just the outsider, the other, is enough for King." King, of course, is a lot less scientific than Carroll, but I agree with him more about what he's more inclusive. It may be that he includes stuff in his definition of horror which isn't really a definition. He doesn't really define it. He goes out of his way of saying, "I'm not going to define it." He may say, stuff that isn't horror is included in this. Obviously not. Stuff that's obviously not horror. That's the other way. I think Carroll is too exclusive. King may turn out to be too inclusive, but he doesn't have a pure definition. He doesn't define it, so he doesn't have to answer to anything, I guess. So that is the horror. That is Noel Carroll out of the way. We're done with Carroll. He did great, though. Thanks, dude. We're going to continue on to the horror tale next time. We're going to start with Stephen in Dance Macabre. Oh, fingers. There we go. Alright. Till next time. Thanks for watching Horror Analysis. Have a great night.